In the meantime, keeping an eye on some interesting developments behind the scenes regarding not only health care, which we told you about, where Republicans now might be dialing that back and waiting to have a repeal effort and a replacement effort at the same time. When that can be done is anyone's guess. We've already heard from Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who was saying on this very show he could come up with a plan like now, and word is that he's got a plan ready to go now. The question is whether there would be enough of Republican support for that. Now, what changed things is word that the president-elect liked Rand Paul's idea. In other words, repeal and replace at the same time to avoid any debate or bad press. Of course, this was this big hearing on Capitol Hill. The likes of Bannon and key strategist Reince Priebus, of course, who will be the chief of staff for the incoming administration, the former CBO Director Doug Holtz-Eakin, on all of that, and now talk, I guess, Doug, that they are looking at tax cuts, but in a less, I don't know, this is my opinion, bold way. In other words, not that off the charts, not Ronald Reagan-esque big, but not that big. Am I interpreting that correctly?
I think that's how it's shaking out. We've heard in recent weeks both Chairman Brady of the Ways and Means Committee and Speaker Paul Ryan talk about budget-neutral tax reform. That's a far cry from a major tax cut. We know where the president-elect was on the campaign. You can only guess they're going to land somewhere in between.
All right. Now, running the CBO in those days when you had to crunch the numbers and all of that, they talk about dynamic accounting, or Republicans do, when they talk about tax cuts treated very differently than spending. And supply-siders and the like who've been pushing these big tax cuts have been saying, yeah, you could have a short-term thing in the deficit and make things worse, but longer term you'll get a lot more revenue and appreciate that dynamic accounting and score it thusly. Do they score it thusly?
Yes, they will. The Joint Committee on Taxation will score any tax reform bill, and consistent with both House and Senate rules, it'll do dynamic scoring of those. What that means is that if the tax reform is going to generate better growth, and that's a top imperative of tax reform, I would think, then they will take into account that better growth generating higher wages, higher profits. Those will be taxed, and they'll get some more revenue from that. That's been the plan all along, and we'll be able to see it this time around.
Now, I don't know how you score something like that. Maybe you use prior tax cuts and get a baseline from that. But how would they do this? Because I get the feeling, and you're closer to this than I am, that Mitch McConnell, when he talked about tax cuts being revenue neutral, particularly the tax cuts on the wealthy, that they not get, maybe to Steve Mnuchin's point, the incoming likely Treasury Secretary, that the rich don't get a tax cut. They get simpler taxes, easier to fill out taxes, but they don't get a tax cut.
So the reality is we don't know. At this point, we have one clear proposal, which is the House blueprint that was put out last summer. We have some suggestions by the Secretary-designate of the Treasury that they're going to broaden the base for affluent Americans in a way that they don't get a net tax cut. I think that's going to be hard to do, quite frankly. There's not that much revenue there. And you have the overall goal of the plan to be revenue neutral, but that includes the growth component. So I think, you know, a lot remains to be seen. This is a huge opportunity for the United States. We have dismal growth prospects. The most important thing we could do would be to raise the top-line rate of economic growth. That would require better productivity growth, and that has always carried with it higher real wages and a better standard of living for the average American. So this is a way for the president-elect to fulfill his pledge to take care of those who put him in office.
Real quickly, do you think Republicans, you know, with big goals, might be stumbling out the gate here? I'm talking the ethics thing that went flat, and then the health care thing that might be delayed because they want to get a repeal and a replacement immediately, and this whole tax cut debate.
I don't think so. And on the health care, there is new polling out today by my sister organization, the American Action Network, that says that 70% of Americans support the strategy on Capitol Hill. Right. Major changes to the Affordable Care Act and a sensible transition to the new system. So that doesn't look like a stumble to me. All right,
just that they're talking different agendas here, but we'll watch it. Doug, thank you very, very much.